Good morning, everyone. Today is May 13th, 2017, and this is the John Chappell Natural Philosophy Society Saturday morning science chat. I'd like to welcome you all today, this morning. And I think there are some updates on the website, on the naturalphilosophy.org website about our upcoming conference, July 19th to 22nd. So let me see if I can go ahead and share that. Let's see here. So it appears that the registration is open. I haven't tried it yet, but it's saying that you need to log into their website. And once you do that, there is a register form or conference payments and something to fill out. And if you can submit a paper for the conference, and you need to be a paid member, I believe, to do that, to be in the proceedings. So that is coming right up in July. So do we have some people here who are planning on going to the conference this year? I'm planning on doing that myself. Okay.
For me, it's a bit too far. It's at the other end of the world.
The other end of the world. Well, you know, the other end of the world is only like a...
Yeah, it's Australia effect, but well, this is...
yeah, that's coming from about as far away as you can, I think. That's probably 18 to 24-hour flight.
Yeah.
But still, isn't it amazing that we can fly from one end of the planet to another in less than 24 hours?
That's amazing. Yes.
It used to be you had to be...
Big things keep in the sky. That's even more amazing.
Yeah, you remember back in, a couple hundred years ago, if you wanted to go from one side of the planet to the other, you'd have to be a action adventurer to do that.
50 years ago, we couldn't chat like this.
Yes, and we couldn't chat like this either.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hans, where are you chatting from anyway? You say you're in Australia?
No. I'm in the Netherlands, in Europe.
In Europe.
Well, we just had the Brexit. We lost England.
Yeah, you lost England. Well, next week, I will be traveling to Thailand. So I don't know whether someone will be substituting for next week's conference or not. So just keep an eye out for the announcement. But that's like a 19-hour flight to go over there.
For holiday or for work?
For holiday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a nice country for keeping a holiday.
Okay, so let's go back here. Okay. So today I thought we would talk about the life and work of Glen Baxter, who just recently passed away. I know that some of us, I see Powell is here, and Bill is here. We were part of Glen Baxter's Monday morning science chat. So I don't know if you guys knew about this, but every Monday for like the past 2-3 years, we had been getting together and having a little science chat between the maybe 5 or 6 of us.
Yeah, and I joined that meeting also a few times, I guess.
Yeah, Hans, you were able to join us a few times, but it was kind of unexpected that Glenn passed away last week.
It's not a happy occurrence to hear that.
Nope, but so I guess he was about 75 or so. And
it's my age, so I have to be careful.
Yeah, so it happens. So I guess it was some kind of cancer or something.
Yeah.
That got him.
Now we can get 120, so we're not built for that.
Uh-huh.
So sometime you have to count for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was kind of surprised that Glenn didn't really, let us know or anything like that, because certainly one of the things we had discussed during our talks was like alternative cures for cancer. I know, Bill, you mentioned that several times. You have actually several experiences, I guess, with alternative cures. Do you
Yes,
think we?
I had to deal with that with my wife nearly 40 years ago, and she was the doctor. We were going to the leading doctor east of the Mississippi in the United States for this type of cancer. It was at George Washington University Hospital, and he had over 200 patients with the same type of cancer my wife has, and it was level 4, which is deadly, and none of the therapies he had used were working. And the next therapy he wanted to do was take my wife's left arm and shoulder off by surgery to eliminate some of the sites of cancer. And my wife said she didn't want to live that way. And so we chose an alternative. And the alternative we found was from the Amish. We live in Maryland, and that hospital we're going to was in D.C., but in Pennsylvania, there was an Amish group that ran something they called the Retreat House, and they would teach you how to get rid of cancer just by changing your diet to eating fresh fruits and vegetables. So their plan was you go there, they put you on a fast for 2 days, then they start you on a fresh fruits and vegetables diet, and you stay there for a number of days. Each day you learn a new breakfast, a new lunch, and a new supper, and they monitor your blood and your urine. And between the two of them, they can tell when your body chemistry becomes into the normal range. And they keep you there until you make normal. Then they send you home and they say, just keep eating what you were taught to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And in my wife's case, we were there 9 days, and she had seven breakfasts, 7 lunches, and 7 dinners, all different, that she had learned how to make. And they had her make them for herself for each day. And so we went home, and 30 days later, we went back to Georgetown University Hospital for our next checkup. And they said, we don't find any cancer in your body. There must be a mistake, because you're supposed to be dead, according to our records. And I found out that of the over 200 patients that had the same type of cancer as my wife, all of them had died but my wife. And she was back to normal just by eating fresh fruits and vegetables. And they asked me at the hospital, well, did you do anything that might have caused this? And we told them about going up to the Pennsylvania to the Amish place and learning how to eat fresh fruits and vegetables. And they said, that is illegal. We're going to report you to the Food and Drug Administration. That is not a registered protocol. And because you have used an illegal protocol of fresh fruits and vegetables, you are no longer allowed to ever come back to this hospital for any therapy. If you come into the emergency room on an ambulance, you will be rejected. Furthermore, after we report you to the Food and Drug Administration today, if you go to any doctor in the United States of America and that doctor offers you any service, we will take that doctor within 24 hours to court and have his license to practice medicine revoked. And 6 months later, we went to another doctor, not in Maryland where we lived, not in D.C. where he went to the hospital, but in the state of Virginia. And he confirmed that the cancer was still in remission. There was no sign of cancer. And within 24 hours, he was taken to court by the Food and Drug Administration, and his license to practice medicine was revoked. And he was not a poor doctor, and he fought that all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Many court cases in Virginia and then up to the Supreme Court. And he lost at every level because he had seen a patient who was eating fresh fruits and vegetables, and it was not a registered protocol for cancer. And he was not allowed to cooperate with any patient who did that. And it made the front page of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and many other newspapers. There was a flurry of activity in Congress to reduce the power of the Food and Drug Administration so that it could not revoke the license of a doctor for seeing a patient who was eating fresh fruits and vegetables as a therapy. But the pharmaceutical industry, which runs the Food and Drug Administration, they contribute more money to congressional campaigns than any other group in the country. And they told the members of Congress, if you vote for this, we won't support you anymore. And so the bill to change the power of the Food and Drug Administration was defeated, and it's still in effect. And but there was one thing that did occur. 17 states passed a state law legalizing the use of fresh fruits and vegetables for any medical purpose whatsoever. And that takes priority over the Food and Drug Administration. And those states included New York, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, California, but only 17 states. If my wife goes to see a doctor, even though it's 40 years ago, in any other state but those 17 states, that doctor will be taken to court within 24 hours and will have his license to practice medicine revoked. My wife's cancer is still in remission, and that shows you what we have problems in science, you know, in terms of political correctness. You see the same type of problems are going on in the medical field. And by the way, that the place we went to in Mannheim, Pennsylvania was shut down by the federal government because they were giving out a therapy of fresh fruits and vegetables for people, and they were not licensed medical doctors, and they were not, the therapy was not on the approved list of the Food and Drug Administration. So that gives you an idea of what's going on in our country.
Yeah, I just sharing with you, I was just doing a little quick search on here. So what FDA, so FDA declared that veggies are unapproved drugs after New York City allowed doctors to prescribe fresh fruit for a treatment for obesity.
Yeah, and New York passed a state law to allow that. But for instance, DC did not, Virginia did not pass that law. So if you go to a hospital in DC and you're using fresh fruits and vegetables as therapy, don't tell the doctors or anybody what you're doing if you want any service there. Otherwise, they're in trouble.
Yeah, so this was 40 years ago. Huh?
They get that from your medical insurance. See, when you go to a doctor, and that very day, if you see them, you know, they take you, after you're finishing their process there, your session, they charge your medical insurance with a bill. And when they do that, the Food and Drug Administration monitors every charge on every health insurance plan, and they get it. And then from there, they go and look to see if your name is on the list of people who have been reported as using illegal therapies, including fresh fruits and vegetables. That's not a registered therapy for any disease.
Yeah, the quote here is that this program makes New York City the largest U.S. city to officially acknowledge that fruits and vegetables have a role to play in preventing chronic degenerative disease an idea that the FDA insists is delusional. According to the FDA, there is no such thing as any fruit, vegetable, supplement, or superfood that has any ability whatsoever to prevent, treat, or cure any disease. According to the FDA, the mere prescribing of a food as something to prevent obesity automatically transforms that food into a drug. Under current FDA regulations, then New York City is guilty of promoting unapproved drugs, which are really just fruits and vegetables, but that's how the FDA logic works.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So,
kind of
yeah.
hard to believe what you're saying there. That your
Well,
wife
it's
was
been
cured.
40 years, and my sister's a medical doctor, and my daughter's a medical doctor, and they both were recommending that we follow the prescribed procedures. And in the case of my wife, they wanted her to have an abortion because she was pregnant. They wanted her to go ahead and have the surgery and have the left arm and shoulder removed, and all that kind of stuff. And my wife would have died. In fact, one of the things I pointed out in the last session I had with a doctor at Georgetown University Hospital, and by the way, this was no minor doctor. His office in the hospital was bigger than my living room and my family room. And it's a teaching hospital. So the particular day we went, they had 50 interns following him around for the day. They have a practice at medical schools to have the interns follow around a doctor for the day so they can see what it's going to be like when they become a medical doctor. And so they were present, and I pointed out, at the time I was working for the Smithsonian Science Information Exchange, and we ran the national database for the National Cancer Institute. And so when I was there, I got a chance at my office. I had a chance to look and see what the success rates for the various therapies that he was using, this doctor was using on my wife. I found that none of them were as successful as doing nothing. They shorten your lifespan. And I pointed that out to him. He says, now you know what we know. And I said, well, why did you use these therapies on my wife if you knew it was just making her worse? I said, that violates the Hippocratic Oath you took when you became a doctor. And he got all upset and stormed out of the room and in the presence of 50 interns. And so you can see what things are going on. There's a lot of immorality in the medical field. And this doctor, he was like the number 2 doctor in the hospital for all purposes whatsoever. And he was really a top guy there at that hospital. And anyway, but my wife has not had a recurrence of the cancer. The therapy was very good and it worked. And basically, a lot of our cancer problems are due to the fact that the Food and Drug Administration requires farmers to raise genetically modified grains and things of that sort. And if you don't, they take you to court and bankrupt you on your farm. And so that kind of activity is causing us, and those grains, genetically modified grains, which cause a lot of cancer in our country and many other medical problems, they are illegal to sell in Europe and Asia because of all the medical problems. But the Food and Drug Administration doesn't care because it generates a lot more business for the medical people, and they're the ones who are funding the Food and Drug Administration. So that's what's going on. And I don't like to have to report that. I don't like that we have to be very careful which state we're in if we go to see a medical doctor. And so it's a crazy world that we live in.
Come over to Europe.
Yeah.
There you don't have those problems.
That's right. And you know what? When President Reagan got cancer, when he was president of the United States, where did he go? He didn't go anywhere in the United States. He went to Germany.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to go.
And he got well.
Yeah, we have good doctors, we have good treatment, and you are free to have those kind of medication as your wife got.
Yeah, yeah.
It's healthy, and a few of my friends have done the same thing. They get a better healthy life, and then they had a much longer life than with medication, and they extended the life at least with a few years.
Uh-huh. Well, I think if Glenn had told us his situation, we could have shared some of this information, and he might have lived a few more years. I don't know. Uh, my wife was a young, uh, in her 20s when she got cancer, and so that was, um, you know, she had a long lifetime to look forward to if she could get well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Excuse
what I
me,
know.
Bill, but isn't this kind of off topic for our discussion?
Yeah, it is. But
Well, no, it's totally on topic because we're talking about Glenn
How is it
Baxter.
on topic?
But it's
Well,
alternative. It's kind of like alternative medicine or alternative science, and
but
we're
I
doing
didn't
alternative
think
science, and that's
we
what
were talking
Glenn was
about.
helping to
Our
support.
purpose was to talk about alternative medicine.
Yeah.
Well, our purpose here today, our main subject is about Glenn Baxter. Glenn Baxter recently passed away from, I guess, lymph cancer.
Well, why don't you talk about his relativity theory or something? It's a little more on point to the topic of physics, which most people are interested in.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that. I think topic of science and cancer is something that well, actually, I mean, it's
talk about UFOs if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, we could talk about that. Maybe someday we'll get into that.
Well, that was one of his favorite topics.
Yeah, Glenn would up there in Maine. It was interesting because he would report seeing a lot of UFO activity, and apparently a lot of other people up in Maine would do that. It's just that they would never ever really talk about it. But when they would get together and say, "Did you see that thing last night?" and they would say, "Yeah, I saw that." It's like, what was that? It's like, so apparently Maine was a hotbed of UFO activity, and he would see like little red lights or something going off in the distance, or he would see objects that would just either just like immediately vanish. They would be there, and then it's like they would just like pop up, and it's like they'd be gone. So up there in Maine, yeah, that was definitely something that Glenn would share with us from time to time. I almost thought that he was a little bit paranoid, that they thought they were observing him or something, right? Or that somehow his science was related to the alien activity and them monitoring him. But that was one of the interesting things about Glenn. But in any case, so we were talking about cancer because I know that Bill does have some interesting stories about alternative cures for cancer. And if Glenn had told us about that, well, actually, I mean, Glenn already heard the stories from Bill about the vegetables. So I don't know whether he tried that, or whether it just happened so quickly, and it just seemed to happen very quickly, that he had any time to really think about that. I mean, I also know that we discussed some other alternative cures, like there's the trans or longitudinal wave generator or something. Bill, you also talked about that. There is
yeah, Anton Prior, a French doctor, discovered during World War II that two types of radiation were coming off of the antenna they use for what do you call it? Seeing the airplanes. I can't think of
radar.
Radar antenna, yeah, radar antenna. And he was in medical school when he was drafted, and he noticed that the food that they were delivering to his unit, which is maintaining the radar system, they deliver their food for the French army and troops and everything. They deliver it in bushel baskets, and he noticed that the bushel baskets next to the radar antenna for his group did not decay. But if he walked down the road a few miles to where there was an infantry camp, and they got their food from the same source, those baskets of food decayed. And if you didn't eat it fairly soon, you had to throw it out. And so he went back to his commander and asked if he could move the bushel baskets of food a little bit further away from the antenna to see if it would make a change. And he got permission to do that. And when he moved it 100 yards away, it started to decay, just like the ones at the infantry unit. And so he moved it back and it stopped. And so he was really interested and intrigued by that. And when the war was over, he finished medical school, became a veterinarian, and he bought some surplus radar units and hired some electrical engineers. And they identified this second type of radiation, which we call longitudinal radiation today. And they made for him a kind of plasma light. And that is available. You can see pictures of it online. This was done in the 1970s. And
do you have his name again? Maybe we can Google
Antwan,
that.
Peron, something like that. Prior, maybe it's Antwan Prior, Priore, something like that. And if you go into Google for images, I think you can see the pictures of his equipment. And so anyway, he had the concept that electromagnetic radiation could somehow recharge molecules in organic material, kind of like a battery is recharged. But it's the light that was recharging it, the longitudinal radiation, not electrical flow of current. And yeah, you got it. You got his name there. And if you go under the picture term, well, maybe it's in here too. I don't know if they have pictures in this one, but they show the pictures of his apparatus. And so he had the idea that, well, maybe if I were to radiate an animal that was sick, and he was a veterinarian, that the recharging the organic molecules in the cells could enable it to overcome whatever disease you might have. So he tried that, and he found it worked. But you had to find particular frequencies of the light for various diseases that the animals might have. But he did that, and these electrical engineers helped him develop a way to measure that and to set up the apparatus so they could radiate with the right type of frequency for that particular problem they were having. And he became very well known in Europe, and people would bring their prize pets and their prize farm animals when they were sick to him to be radiated, and they would get well, even those that had cancer. Well, about this time in the 70s, the French president, his wife became terminally ill with cancer. And he had tried everything: radiation therapy, chemotherapy, radical surgery, immunotherapy, etc. All the things we do in Western medicine, and it didn't help. And so he went to see this fella and said, "Would you radiate my wife?" And the doctor said, "Well, I don't know what the results are going to be because I haven't done people yet, and I only have a license to do animals because I'm a veterinarian." And the president said, "Well, no problem. I'll bring you a license tomorrow to do people, and I'll bring my wife, and you can radiate her." And he says, "And if she doesn't get well from the therapy, it's no big deal because she's going to die very soon anyway. So we want to take the chance and see what might happen. So he brought his wife and a license for him, and he radiated the president's wife, and within 30 days she was well from her cancer. Well, he was very happy, and it was broadcast throughout all of Europe. All the major newspapers carried the story, and the French government gave a large grant to this doctor to start doing people. And then a couple weeks later, this man and all of his electrical technicians and everybody that worked in his veterinary practice were murdered by the mafia. And the French government identified the mafia as having done it, but they were not able to confirm who paid them to do that. And but the feeling was in the medical community that it was the pharmaceutical industry, because that's the largest industry in Europe, and this man's work didn't require the use of any pharmaceuticals for medical purposes. And so they thought it was threatening their trillion-dollar industry. And so they may have paid someone to take care of him, but the doctors in Europe are afraid to do this practice the way he did because of what happened to him and his associates. And but in the movie Star Wars, if you've seen that, there's two very interesting technologies that are promoted in the movie. The first one was called the communicator, which we now call the cell phone. And the second one was called the tricorder. And the tricorder was basically imitating what Peron had done, and it was radiating people who were sick or had a disease with longitudinal radiation and making them well. And the Chinese have developed a way to take a handheld laser and to use a crystal to convert the transverse radiation to longitudinal. And they now have the capability to begin the manufacturing of a longitudinal radiation device for medical purposes. And so we may see that coming out in the near future. And so what was science fiction in the past may be becoming actual reality.
So I found a picture of Antwan's scalar energy plasma tube. It doesn't look that complicated.
That's that. I don't know exactly what that is, but the one that you want to see is two stories high. And
I think it's that one, right?
Yeah, that one there. That's it. That's the one he used. They don't show it in this particular picture, but underneath that thing just to his left is a gurney, and you can put an animal or a person on there and radiate them. And there's all kinds of electrical instrumentation to control this kind of like plasma light that's in there. And yeah. But yeah, the other one's small, but this one is the one he actually used for animals and for people.
Yeah, that's giant. So, it's interesting. You have these stories, and we can go on the internet and can basically confirm what you're saying about Antwan.
Remember that this all happened 20 years before we had the internet, but still people remember it. There's people's testimony that I had this disease or cancer or whatever, and I got well, or my animals got well, from this radiation. So there's a lot of testimony of that sort. By the way, that type of testimony in America is not allowed. And we've had doctors who got people well from various diseases by using different types of procedures. And when their license to practice medicine is revoked, and they bring there was one woman who brought 10,000 people she had gotten well from whatever disease it was. I can't remember. to say it worked. We got the therapy and it worked. And the government said, sorry, your testimonies don't count. And all these people felt like they were being robbed of the type of medical procedures that worked in favor of the pharmaceutical procedures. And so anyway, that's just something that is kind of interest to see what's going on.
Yeah, it's too bad. Like I said, I was wondering whether, you could have helped out Glenn there or not.
Yeah.
But I think that's two interesting stories. It's worth noting because, a lot of people in our group here are fairly old and may get sick someday, and maybe someday may want to look into some of these alternative therapies. I mean, that's actually one of the main concerns with the CNPS is preserving the legacy of the scientists, and a lot of the dissident scientists are, of course, all old and retired, and because they're allowed to do that since they're no longer relying on their livelihood for science, and they can say whatever they want. But it does mean that they're more liable to pass away.
There was some knowledge about radar equipment in the 60s that sailormen that went off to see their girlfriends put themselves in front of the radar equipment for a while and then went to the girlfriend and didn't risk that the girl became pregnant because this radar radiation was affecting their semen and made it ineffective. And it is also known that microwave radiation affects early birth, the quick division of cells in upcoming growing early babies. How do you call those? These are not just full human beings, but still bunch of cells. And if you radiate them with microwave, then this whole division process is affected. That's a known fact. So quick dividing cells are affected by microwave radiation.
Yeah, so that would be a negative effect. I mean, it is a fact that we have.
Yeah, but cancer is also something that concerns very quick division of cells. So if you can stop that quick division, then maybe you can cure cancer.
Okay, but my note was that we all have like these microwave ovens now in our kitchen, and it's like that's basically a radar unit, right? So
it's a klystron inside of it, and it creates a microwave, but it's quite well enveloped so that not much of the radiation is going beyond the case. But I think pregnant ladies that are in the early phase must also be careful approaching a microwave oven.
Yeah, that might be good advice. Or maybe we can modify our microwave oven to produce these longitudinal waves.
I don't know if you need to have longitudinal. It's the frequency that interferes with chemical bonds inside quickly dividing cells. It's the same principle that magnetic resonance medical equipment is using. MRI is using similar principles. It can interfere with chemical bonds that are creating young life. and the MRI equipment makes images of it. But they are very strong fields that they use. Not only magnetic fields, but they use microwave radiation.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, now I'm starting to share Glenn Baxter's main website. So this is www.k1man.com. And if you go to that, you will land immediately on his physics page. Now, Glenn was an old radio guy, and apparently he had a radio station, a shortwave radio station, whose call name was K1 Man. So I think that's where that came from. And he would regularly broadcast our Monday morning discussions on shortwave radio. So I'm not sure anyone was tuning in, but that was one of the things he did. But Glenn instituted the Institute for Advanced Research here. And this is his website where he put basically everything all the time. So this is basically, this one PDF is basically his entire website. Instead of having different pages, it's just one giant PDF. So if you want to see what Glenn was up to, you know, we can watch. Now, we don't know how long this website will remain up. Probably basically when the bill for this website comes due, it probably won't get paid, and eventually this website will go down. So I thought that was something we might want to discuss, which is how do we preserve the legacy of like the work that Glenn did. But yeah, so this is Glenn's.
Well, I'll vote for it to keep his work online as long as it's possible. Eventually at another place, eventually in our websites.
Yeah, I was wondering, did just you know, ideally you'd want to have some public, long-lasting website that doesn't require the financial assistance of anybody. So it's like if like Yahoo or Google or something like that
there is
have
something,
free websites.
there is something that's called VExtra, and in VExtra you can put PDF files. So if the PDF files of Glenn will be put there, they will be there forever, and it's free. It's free of cost.
What's the issue with ownership? Do you know?
I don't know what the issue with ownership is. I guess Glenn isn't around to complain about it. So
maybe someone inherited his possessions.
Probably his wife, Bonnie.
Well, has anybody talked to her about the issue of ownership?
Well,
I don't know. It sounds like, you know, Al has talked to Bonnie, and Al indicated that, you know, the website will disappear as soon as a bill comes due for it.
Uh-huh.
So that's probably Al probably knows the best. He sounds like he's been in contact.
So someone must download these PDFs so that we eventually can put them on VExtra, and then everything is saved.
Well, Glenn's website's a little bit more complicated than that because he has a lot of recordings. So those would also need to be preserved.
Yeah, the VExtra only takes PDF files.
But let's see here. Let's just look at one of Glenn's PDF files here.
Well, have you talked to Dave DeHilster about this?
No, we really haven't talked to anybody about it. So, and that's what the purpose of this day's discussion is to figure out, you know, what would be the strategy for trying to preserve this information. I know that the CNPS website itself is a repository for this type of information. I don't think we can copy like whole websites into the CNPS system. But that's something you can do. I see that they have things that can copy entire websites. I'm not exactly sure how they work.
You're talking about the Wayback Machine?
Well, they do have that as well. There's archive.org, which theoretically is already copying stuff. I mean, let's see whether that's actually true. Let's go to archive.org, and if Glen's website is being indexed, then really we don't have to worry about it, because then anyone can go and go to the Wayback Machine. Yeah, it looks like Glen's website has been indexed. So last update.
That doesn't mean that the recordings and everything are preserved there. So
no, that's why I'm looking to see whether they were preserved or not.
Physically, the main issue is physically you want to get a hold of the machine and the memory contents of the machine that's running the website.
So let's see here. Is this? I don't know whether this is retrieving the recording from the Wayback Machine or retrieving it from. It's probably retrieving it from the main website.
Well, the Wayback Machine is supposed to preserve the websites, but you know, I don't know anything about. I don't think that's a very valid alternative for this. If you want to preserve all the audio recordings, my presumption is the objective is to preserve the audio recordings which record the conversations. Is that not correct?
We'll try and preserve everything, and including the audio recordings are a special problem for Glen's website.
He also had conferences that were up in Maine, and I think that's what you're seeing here. These are audio recordings of the conference. The conferences were live with people.
Well, there's a lot of stuff there. That's the whole issue. There's the Monday morning discussions. There were recordings that he made. For instance, there's a number of, I don't know how many recordings he made with me where he talked with me. And I'm sure he did the same with Al McDowell and a lot of other people, where he would call them on the phone and make basically interview recordings. And so there's a lot of those as well. So there's the conferences, the Monday morning conferences, then there are audio recordings of interviews. Then there's also, as you said, recordings of the conferences. So there's a lot of material there. And the real question is what's going to happen to it, which I think is touches on ownership issues.
Well, I think if there was ownership issues, we'd probably just contact Bonnie, and she'd probably say yes or no. I would imagine she would have no objections.
Well, you don't know that.
Well, probably
until somebody addresses that. It's not clear whether it's owned by the I forget the name of the institute. What the ownership issue, whether it's in
Institute for Advanced Research.
And it's not clear whether that is, and Glen was also involved in a lot of legal issues with the federal government with respect to his operating a shortwave broadcast station illegally. It's not clear to me what legal issues may be entangling with respect to this. Don't know.
Yep, don't know. It's something to consider and be aware of.
Well, I personally, I don't think Nick Percival is here, but I think Nick Percival is in the best position to address these questions for the reason that he's a director of the NPA. And so I don't know what his thinking is on this or not.
All right. Well, let's just take a look what's on Glen's website here. So currently we have a lot of MP3s. So if we open that up, let's see whether we can listen in on one of these to make sure that this would typically be a 2-hour Monday morning conference. And Glenn was a great moderator, because usually he didn't have any really super strong opinions of his own normally. So he would mostly just stir the pot and let the people who did have strong opinions talk. Now I'm playing the conference. Can you guys hear the conference or not?
No.
No one can hear the conference here. Let me see whether
you can't. There's nothing to see, I guess.
Well, what's the point of you know, we know all these recordings are out there.
2016. I was going to start.
So can you guys hear that?
Giving
Yes.
an update on what he's found out about low energy fusion, but I wanted to wait until Dr. Lucas is here before we start that, because I want to get Dr. Lucas's reaction to that. But in the meantime, Dr. McDowell, what would you like to talk about? Anything particular?
I don't have any really big news subjects. I have one question, and maybe somebody can answer. The last thing I saw about the Large Hadron Collider was that they admitted that they had thus far failed to find the Higgs boson. Does that mean the Higgs boson is dead, or is it still simply undiscovered? Is that Charles Lucas
has joined the conference?
Okay, the question out on the floor, just temporarily, or for openers, is where is the Higgs boson? Is that a dead issue? Let's go.
Franklin, I don't know why we need to listen to this. The recordings, the quality of the recordings is not the best because they were over telephone lines, which is another issue.
Well, I don't think that they actually announced that. I mean, they were looking, they had thought they had discovered another.
All right, just wanted to give everyone a sample of that. That was an introduction, a typical introduction to the conference, where Glenn would go around and ask the participants what's the topic of the day, and it was amazing that for 2 hours at a time for 2 or 3 years, we were able to have very interesting discussions. There we were talking about the Higgs boson and cold fusion, and you'd think we would have run out of things to talk about pretty quickly, but we didn't. It was always very interesting. I think we always learned something new, and there was basically never a dull moment during that entire time. So, but there were a lot of interesting topics, and so that's one of the things you can check out, which is all of these recordings that Glenn has while they're still there. So that was a typical physics talk program.
I see that David DeHelster is here. David, are you participating? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I apologize. I am running on trying to get one computer to work right, and all of them are not cooperating today. I usually want to put a headset, but I thought I had a couple of things where my wife is off in the store, so I'm free to reign and do these terrible dissonant kind of fun stuff. But I did want to mention about, I guess you guys were talking about yeah, see, that's what I'm going to have a problem here. Let me see if I'm going to get feedback. I tried to put my headset on 2 computers and neither one want to cooperate. But I just wanted to make a mention. I did talk with Cynthia Whitney, our chief scientist, and she's going through the same problem where she's doing Galilean electrodynamics. And I'm starting to see, as people pass on, that we're going to have to try to preserve some of this information. My goodness, it's going to be lost. So you guys were talking about what kinds of things that can be done. Is there a website? Can someone Franklin, can you in about 2 sentences tell me what you guys are looking at, like somebody's website or?
Yeah, we've got Glen's website. It's basically one PDF, but it's linked to a bunch of other MP3s and other PDFs largely. So his main website is easy to preserve because it's one PDF, but it's getting something to download the MP3s, which would be the problem.
Okay, first simple question: do we have access to it in some way? One of us is this Glenn Dean?
Glen Baxter. You know, we have public access to his website, so you can download anything there right now.
Yeah, but I mean, is there?
We don't have any kind of back end
to his server.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it can be done. It's just so tedious. What we need to do is just right-click and save, and then we can, then put them on the site. That's on our site, and then link them. We can just build it again and link it so that it's on the server, the CNPS server. But
I think the easiest thing to do is get physical possession of the computer, of the server.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
The way really is to get FTP access, file transfer protocol access. If we have that, then we can just go and actually copy them, and it's quite simple at that point. Otherwise, what's going to happen is someone's going to have to spend some hours right-clicking and saving. My time, everybody's time is limited, obviously, so that would be the other way. But yeah, I mean.
Yeah. Okay. Now here's the problem, David.
Yeah.
You don't know what kind of link that he has. From what I recall, his telephone line is internet connection isn't very high speed.
Are you saying that this is on a server in his house?
Yes, that's what I think. We don't really know. That's the part of the issue.
Oh, really? Because it's not he doesn't pay a server to keep it.
No, I'm thinking he does, because he would report like a gigabytes worth of download, and those reports would typically come from a internet cloud provider.
We don't know. That's the whole point.
Well, no, that's a big point because the truth be known, I don't know if anyone, and that's all I work in for 30 years, of people who are in computer business. No one I know had their own server in their basement except for Clinton maybe, but everybody has to have it somewhere. So, well, you know what? We can investigate it. Franklin, if you send me, the links and everything, if you could email those to me, I can do some investigation because I can find out where it is.
I think Glenn probably used that. The Institute site did have a server of his own on the Institute. I think that's probably where his stuff was stored. Some of the things about the MP3s that he had was that I think he was trying to index them or at least summarize what each one contained, because the main PDF just contains dates and times for each PDF, and not really much about the content of each PDF.
The index system is pretty bad. That's another issue. issue?
Yeah, basically, this is his website here. So it's just a list of links and by date.
Can you right click on those, Franklin?
Yeah, you can right click and then we could, let's see here. Document properties. It should be a download, but you know, if I click on a specific link, I can save it.
Oh, okay. Well, then we can get them. It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
That's
just take.
true. Hold on. There are two issues in my mind, David. There's,
Sure.
well, do you want them is the first issue. And the second issue is once you've got them, what are you going to do with them?
Well, those are two easy questions. Number one of the goals of the organization is to preserve anything, you know, outside the mainstream. So yeah, we want them, so we have them. So in case, you know, they go the same, like I'm talking with, like I said, I'm talking with Cynthia about Galilean electrodynamics. Number two, yeah, we have a place to put it very simply. We have in the database system I created, and in also new wiki, and in our natural philosophy wiki, we can keep all that information very easily. So we have media, what I call media objects, and so Glenn Baxter, if he has those, then we would make him the owner of those, go into our database and create them, and then we can even have somebody, if they want to listen to them, then write a paragraph of content. We'd have all that information. So, you know, that's totally, you know, we have a place for it.
So where could we put it? So I'm on the naturalphilosophy.org site. So if someone wanted to,
that's not my point I'm getting at. The point is that they're not indexed by, they're not, you know, filed by any reasonable, you know, there you have a bunch of recordings, and so there has to be some system whereby you can go to, I don't think they're filed by date or anything like that. They're just, you know, file names.
yeah, they're just listed out. I don't think there's anything we can do about that. So, you know, it's just going to have to preserve it the way that Glenn's got it. And, you know, David mentions that it's possible for someone to come in later to listen to the conference and then perhaps put an index to it, or at least list what its topics of conversation were, so that someone could at least search for it. But right now, people just have to click randomly and then listen randomly. That's just the way it is.
Tons of them.
Volume probably in the hundreds, probably.
Sort of like us, we have 200 or 300, but they're mostly videos, and we've lost some. I mean, we've been doing these video conferences, believe it or not, since 2008 when we were using Vim or something like that, or whatever it was, Dim. And so I've tried to preserve all those, but you know, all of this is archiving things. It's not an easy process. Someone's going to have to do it. It's sort of like any of this. It's like our Wikipedia is waiting. I'm finally getting some people writing some great stuff for our Wikipedia. The idea is we can have, you know, everything there. We need to put them on a server, though. I think what I would say is this: is if is this a PDF? You're talking about, Franklin?
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through. This is the main PDF. So this PDF has lists of papers like gravitrons and electrons. That's announcing his institute.
And actuality, I could take that PDF and make a web page out of it, change the K1, the K-man, and the K1 man to something else, and where we would have those files. But of course, we're going to have to download all of those files. The only thing that would be possible is if we were to go in there and he actually had allowed a directory listing of those. But again, you know, otherwise it's going to be just a humongous task. People can, you know, everybody can take a page and download it and then, you know, put it somewhere like on a Dropbox or something. But yeah, it's there's going to be some time dedicated to it. I mean, could it be automated? Probably. I mean, I could probably write some PHP scripts to do that. Not easy, but a couple hours worth of work. So basically go through that, get all the PDF files, and are those links pretty live, Franklin? Has anybody checked them out to see if they're good links or dead links? Because sometimes they can go dead.
Well, I'm clicking through some of the links. One of the things that Glenn did is that he summarized like the work of other people that he's working with, and sometimes he would record the email chains, and so he's got his own little summaries of things that he's collected from various people. Like this is like an email chain. Look, there's something from Harry from 2013.
We can throw that out.
Yeah. So there's all this stuff
Just kidding, Harry.
From different people that Glenn's preserved. So Glenn's been doing his job to try and preserve some of these discussions here. So there's a lot.
Absolutely.
Well, a lot of it is duplicating other stuff. But,
Yes.
you know, I just think the easiest thing to do would be to physically get the server.
That's the easiest thing. That's the easiest thing. There's a second way to do this, and that is I have programs that can go through here and rip out all the HTML links that are PDFs and anything like that. And then I could write a PHP program.
But David,
and it would download. No, but what it would do would download them all. It would just basically, I can write a script. I'd make a text file with every line has a linked PDF file. That program would then go and then literally read it, because PHP can read it just like a browser, and pull it in and save it to actually, I could do that on the CNPS server and literally have it all being transferred directly to the CNPS server. I mean, that's one way to do it. I can stop sleeping for a month.
Well, I think the bottom line is if you want to, you know, it's a question of wanting to do it and getting the time and the resources to do it. The other alternative would be to essentially provide the money to keep the current site operating. But I don't know, you know, that's the other alternative until you figure out how to get all the information transferred.
I'll tell you the truth, I think it'd probably be easier easier for me just to try to write the script to do this. It probably isn't more than maybe an hour's worth of work, and then it would be all transferred over. I put it in a place, then and then just make a listing of it in some way, you know. Even if it's, even if it's the case, all we're doing is move, I'll write an automated program to move all those things over to a place, have those links all listed, and then have those documents. Those documents, they're PDFs. It could be the case. I can work on it. I can look at it.
But
I
David,
just did a search here. So, I've done this before when I've had to move my own website to another provider. So they've had this, like there's the website copier. This will read everything that's on the website and then copy it to your hard disk. And then from there you
that's
can
great. The
FTP
only
it.
problem is that what is the data rate capability of the connection that you have to his server?
Well, it's enough to do an MP3, which has to be pretty high. Like I said, I don't believe
Well, I've copied files from his machine to my machine, okay, and it took a long time and it was a tedious process. I went through
it
and
could be.
Folks,
okay, what I tried to do was to download the stuff that where he was interviewing me, okay? In other words, the files where he interviewed me. And I downloaded those, and it was a very long, it took a long time, and I don't think I did all of them. And it took a long time and it was slow. Okay.
How did
So
you do it?
I I basically copied the files
yeah, right.
Well,
to my machine.
you can't copy the files on what, I mean, if you're doing it remotely,
That's
you,
not my point. My point is you're making the assumption that there's a high speed connection to his server.
no, it doesn't matter. Even if he's got just dial-up, this like website copy, you just turn it on, and even if it takes 6 days to do it, it will do it.
Okay, well, 6 days is kind of a long time.
The only thing is, here's what I would ask you, Franklin. This works with HTML, but his stuff is in PDF, isn't it?
I think this probably just copies all the files that are accessible. Hopefully, I don't know, but they have stuff like this.
No, I know how they work because I've actually built web spidering systems that copy things. What I'm saying is that the PDF file is where all the stuff is. It's not an HTML. All
Yeah.
these copy tools that you're looking at require a web page.
Yeah, so that might be another trick. You have to be able to look in the PDF file and pull the PDF file link out of there.
Well, I can do, what I'm saying is I can do that. I can take a PDF and turn it into an HTML. And then if we turn it into an HTML, I can put it on the CNPS website, and at that point, we can run it to go and clone that. Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. That definitely is. That will automate downloading it.
David,
I'm very aware that those tools out there.
Here's my suggestion. This is Harry Rickard. Just make a copy of his server on your server, and so just basically keep the website copied on your server. That to me is the simplest thing to do.
Of course, but you need FTP access. You have to have access directly to their server. That's called FTP.
Well, that's the issue. The issue is when the money.
Who has FTP? Who's in charge? Who owns this right now?
Well, that would be
Glen Baxter, and he's dead.
No, I understand that, but does somebody else have that information?
Well, that's the issue.
Glen is survived by his wife Bonnie, but like your wife, she may not be the most supportive person in this endeavor. But we can ask her.
Probably doesn't know any about how it works.
No, I believe you. Okay, so this is what we do. It makes sense. I'll take the PDF. I'll make a HTML file out of it. I'll grab one of these, what they call spidering tools, website copying tools, which needs to have HTML. I'll change the PDF to HTML, run this thing on it, and let it go at it.
Yeah, we'll see how much we can pull off that way.
Yeah, let's do it that way. That's a really great solution. Okay.
And then what would you have at the end? You'd have a copy of his website, right?
No, I would have all the file. No. Okay. The problem with there's two things. One, you can run what he has on on his website and get whatever you can from it. But if it's the case that it's the PDF files that hold most of the links to the information, we'll have to take those PDF files first. I'll have to do that, translate them from PDF to HTML, put them on our server, CNPS server, and then have this tool go at it. But this tool can go at his website and get whatever that has, and what it does is it normally comes to your local computer. So it'll all
David,
download.
why don't you just reproduce his website on your server?
That takes two steps if we don't have FTP access, and that would be to do one of these copying things like website copying programs like Franklin has, and then that comes to my local disk, and then I move that local disk, those local files to the CNPS server, put /Baxter or something like that, have the whole thing there. Now we can't guarantee we'll get everything like there. Sometimes copying those things, you can't get it encrypted. Sometimes they use HTML, Java, those kinds of things. I don't think he did, but that's the way it goes. It's a two-step process. But then again, like I said, it sounds like, is that true, Franklin, that a lot of the content isn't on directly from his website, but are from PDF files, links?
Well, his entire website is just one PDF file with links to MP3s and other PDFs.
Okay, yeah. So, okay. So he doesn't have okay, I'm a little confused. A website means you have HTML. Does he have an HTML website?
No, it's just that his website, when you go to it, redirects immediately to a PDF file. Okay. So it's as if you clicked on the PDF file.
Harry, there is no website. Right now it's a PDF file. And so what I can do is I can make that PDF file into a website at our /Baxter and then run this guy on it. That's what I would do.
Hey, I just downloaded one of the MP3s, 70 megabytes in seconds.
So there must be a fairly fast connection.
That's because you believe in special relativity, so things move fast. No, that's great. That's good news. That's good news. Okay, so that's what I'll do. I'll get that. I can translate that.
But David, you must also activate all the pointers, the links that are in the PDF files.
I understand that, but I've got a programming language that I invented with my friend called NLP++, and that allows us to read documents like this and then create those links. I can do it. That's not a problem.
So Glenn doesn't strike me as the kind of person that would have just left all his life's work, or at least these conferences behind without some kind of trail to preserve them. I mean, he's got to have something in his will or some kind of provisions, don't you think?
You know, he put at least some of his main PDFs in Vextra, I believe.
I think that's true, but
search in Vextra. I don't know. He may have stopped or something at some point.
Yeah, but I think he wanted to preserve his own website. I would think that he's got some kind of arrangement if you talk to his widow about that.
Yeah, we should contact her and ask her permission for doing that. So certainly we'll do that. We have her email address, I guess. So we'll present that as a plan. But we're just going to copy his website.
My feeling is we should do it anyways, no matter what, because even if she sort of balks at it, the truth is it's in public domain, and so folks, who's going to come after us? I mean, that means someone actually cares. So.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, and again, I think that our goal, it's easier to ask forgiveness and permission, but we'll call. When I was making my movie, I had actually several people who had died before the movie came out, and I talked with their widows or widowers, and they had no problem. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information there. I mean, suppose someday I become world famous scientist, and these conversations will be like when Einstein was talking to his buddies in the coffee shop, right? So it would be of historical significance if that ever happened.
Our goal. you know, we have to sort of follow our charter, which is to support all sort of this work outside the mainstream, and this is part of it. In fact, it doesn't even get close to what we have until we can get some type of rich donor. Uh, 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 Greg Volk has stacks and stacks and boxes of written material, printed material. So, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff out there. So, and I'm still working on. I'm trying to get a PDF to wiki format, because my goal right now, I have a latex to wiki translator. So all the papers now that we have are going to go into the Wikipedia, and when you put it into Wikipedia, you've got immense search capabilities that you don't have in other systems. So, you know, preserving information, you know, is quite important to this. So I think we've got a plan. I'll give it a try, and we can go from there. And we can. I think that's a great idea, Franklin. That getting those that you know, if I can make it into an HTML page, it needs to go to a URL to start, and all those links I can turn into real links. And it sounds like from somebody here that maybe it is faster. Maybe you know, the connections are okay. So okay, I'll bop out here, but that sounds like a plan.
Yeah, at least it's easier that his stuff is all on an electronic website and not just a pile of papers on his desk. So that does make it easy to try and preserve that.
Like I said, I had a very extensive, long phone call with 75-year-old Cynthia Whitney, who's been curating and doing the Galilean Electrodynamics Journal, and does quite a lot of it. And she's got a more archaic system. So what I'm going to try to do is, she does it all in Word, but my goal is, and I talked with her, I said in the next couple of years, we want to transfer that over and then have it continue with the CNPS, because once people are gone, I told her, I said, you know, once you've hit 100 and you don't want to do it anymore, then we should not just simply throw that away. So these are some of the things we're facing, because as we lose people, we're losing information, and we got to sort of keep ourselves up with that. So that's another thing we want to do in the future.
All right, well, good. It sounds like we have some sort of plan for helping to preserve Glen's website. So let's just get a little bit into some of the things that Glen had talked about. Now, generally speaking, he didn't have very strong opinions on things, although he did have his opinions on relativity, and that his claim was always that he had managed to come up with a way of disproving, that was one of his pet things, of disproving relativity. I'm not exactly sure which one of these programs, which one of these PDFs that would be.
I know one thing, Glen did have in a version 2 is E equals MC squared. He brought that up, and he would become the speaker instead of the host.
Yeah, that's why Glen was a better host than me, because Glen usually didn't have very strong opinions, whereas like I would, of course, have lots of very strong opinions. But during the times he would have an opinion, he would express them. Now, one of the opinions that he would frequently express was that, you know, we would give our opinion about what the nature of space is. And so, for example, I would say space is a material substance made of positrons, electrons, and Dr. Lucas might say that it's the electromagnetic field is fundamental. But Glen, his continuing opinion was that it was either nothing or that it was something else that we don't know. So he was not particularly convinced at any of our pet theories as to what space is, and he adamantly would cling to the idea that that it was something else. So I mean, that's just kind of an example of, like, he doesn't have a dog in this fight, but he's just not particularly convinced about anything we would say. And one of the last things we were discussing was that Glen basically said that he didn't understand anything of what I was saying. So I couldn't understand that. I was thinking the stuff that I was saying was probably the easiest stuff to understand. But he would say stuff like that. But let's look at one of his papers here, I guess. So he's talking about, many talk about Dr. Einstein's special relativity when he was thinking Lorentz Einstein, 1916 Lorentz relativity. The difference is described in this paper. So his papers are typically in this format. He's got his abstract and he's got his argument. I think this is his main paper about relativity, C1.
But one of Glen's statements was, if you understood the difference in the speed of light and the relative speed of light, you were probably his best buddy and the only other person in the world that understood that.
Yeah, he always said that Einstein had equated those two incorrectly, and that was the root of all evil in relativity, basically. So, Harry, you talked a lot with Glen. Did you have any observations or stories you wanted to tell us about your time with Glen? Or what did you think was his major scientific viewpoints? Let's see here.
I think Franklin, my view, or as I recall, he was very strong on Mach's principle in describing gravity.
In Mach's principle, let's see here. Let's see. How about Bill? You've talked to. What do you think were Glen's main points in science? I know that's a little bit difficult. Like I said, normally he wouldn't express a super strong opinion one way or the other. But maybe you could comment on what you thought Glen's main contributions would be.
Glen was not, what do you say, like many of us who puts out a lot of scientific papers. He did have a few topics that he did, like we were mentioning relativity theory and some problems between relative speed of light and the speed of light. And he was interested in electrodynamics because he was a ham radio operator, and he had direct experience with a certain amount of electronics in that activity that he was doing. And this conference was originally done over the shortwave before the internet became available, and he started using that. But there was, and then he used cell phones too. So he was using different technologies at different times. And I don't know if there's any other people involved with the institute that he started. There might be some other people, although I don't know about that. Has anyone here attended the physical conferences that he held in Maine? I was invited to one, but I didn't get to go for some reason. And so I didn't get to see what it was like. But he did actually have a physical meeting that was held, I think, in a motel or something near the airport, near where he lives. And that was the way he used to run those conferences. But
yeah, I was wondering, like, Harry, did you ever go to his conferences or anything? Those are always too far away for me.
The only person I know was Roger Ryden.
Roger may have gone to his
Roger Ryden, Professor Ryden.
Would Al McDowell attended? He was quite consistent with talking to Glenn?
Don't know.
So here's one of Glenn's. Here's one of the things. So he invented something called gravitrons. So not a gravitron, and it's supposed to replace the Higgs particle and responsible for all mass in the universe. So here he does have a particular idea. Let's see, but was this the gravitron his ether? But in any case, we can look at his paper here and see what he was thinking. So he has some thoughts on inertia, and that if you try and push on a collection of gravitrons, they will all radiate gravity and will naturally resist such an attempt and exert inertia. So that is Glenn's idea of inertia, that the gravitrons radiate gravity. And there's a picture of Glenn at home.
David, are you still there?
There's a picture of him when he was 4 years old.
David, this is Harry. Are you still there?
I don't know. Let's see. Is he still there? Still listed here.
I guess he signed out.
His wife may have come back.
Well, we have another issue, which is the Ivor Cat website. Ivor's getting kind of up there, and I don't know what's going to happen to his website when he dies. We ought to be looking into that.
Let's see. What is Ivor's website? Do you have the URL handy? Let's have a look at that.
www.ivorcat.co.uk.
Okay, let's see if that brings up here. Okay, so here we have Ivor Cat's website. Now, I've always found that his website is not the best formatted website in the world.
Well, it's not really that different from Glenn Baxter's.
Yes, it's not that much different. So we've just got he's got a main website here, and you can click on some EM theory. Okay, this looks more ordered here.
Well,
and he's got links.
That's another example of what happens when he gets sick, and who's going to preserve the information.
I think maybe that's a topic for basically all of us, because all of us don't know how long we're going to be on this earth, and we should work on getting our information into places that don't require.
I don't have a website.
Well, then you're going to have to work on putting your stuff on places that don't require your personal intervention. Like people have mentioned, you can put stuff on Vixera. You can put stuff up on the CNPS wiki, I suppose. But the idea being putting your information somewhere that doesn't rely on your personal financial support, so that if something happens to you, your information will without anyone doing anything, is still preserved for posterity.
I created a project on Wikiversity, and that works pretty well.
Yeah, that's one alternative. We can just go, like I said, Wikipedia will live on without you. So
yeah,
that is something that
I think it will be very long, at least long after I died. It still will be there, and the same thing happens at Vixera. What you store there will last forever, at least a century.
As long as someone doesn't shut them down, right?
No. They have funding.
Well,
They
who funds them?
They use very small advertisement, and that seems to be sufficient to keep them alive.
Since that is like the hotbed of dissident scientists, you think someone would be trying to shut that place down, right?
Well, how they manage, kind of like our site is managed, though. I mean, they still have management comes and goes.
Yeah, that's why I think you need to pick some place which is like a gigantic corporation like Yahoo or Google, who you know for are pretty sure will be whatever they put up will be around. Because the problem with all these other internet companies is that, yeah, they have a tendency to go bankrupt. And then when they do, then if you poured all your heart and effort into that website, then that will disappear. So, and then, you know, there are organizations like CNPS is trying to preserve this stuff, but yet, as we have seen, it's like that organizations like that can undergo, you know, massive upheavals that put their entire existence in question, and you can lose stuff that way.
Maybe we just need access to the federal government's computers. I'm sure they're tracking everything, right?
We'll stick it on Hillary Clinton's personal server. That will work.
Retrieval will be a very difficult thing in such environments. You can store it. It's easy. It's done for you, but it's not so easy to retrieve it from those sites.
So maybe the deal is that you gotta spread it around in a couple different places.
Yeah.
Put stuff in Vixera, put stuff in Wikipedia, put stuff in.
But isn't the Wayback Machine supposed to be preserving that?
Yeah, it's probably also in the Wayback Machine. It's not readily indexable, I suppose, in the Wayback Machine, though. Wayback Machine, I believe, will keep it, in which case you just have to make sure that it's being indexed.
So who manages the Wayback Machine and funds that?
Yeah, I don't know who funds that and who keeps track of that. That would seem to be quite an endeavor to back up the entire internet, and it must cost some dollars to do that.
This is Bill Lucas. I'm president currently of Common Sense Science, and the first 20 years the president was Dave Bergman, and he's had serious health problems and he can't continue, so I've had to take over. And I have this same problem that you're talking about. We have a website, but our website, people who were working on it have changed over time, and it's not being upgraded very frequently. And the question is, how do you capture what you have done over time, and how do you, if you have the information from previous people, what do you do with it? And one of the approaches that I've taken is the publication of books that summarize the essence of these people. So, for instance, in electrodynamics, I've created books with the works of William Hooper. I have done it for 2 or 3 other people who have been very creative over time. And in there I reference their papers, but basically I have the content of those papers in the book that I've created. And then those are published on CreateSpace, a subsidiary of Amazon.com. And they are become available on Amazon.com indefinitely. And so that way you can take all the work of one particular person and like, for instance, if their papers are available, you can take all their papers and put them together in a book and publish that. And then you can make it both a printed book and a ebook. And so that way they're available at fairly low cost to other people. And so, for instance, my work is being summarized in purely scientific work in 5 volumes on the internet, and my religious work is in a similar number of volumes also.
So
And,
what's the title of like one of your books where you're preserving like William Hooper's stuff?
That is, I'm waiting for something to expire and before I release it, but I can tell you what the title will be. Let me look it up here.
Well, I was just I'm on the Amazon website, so I wanted to just look at some of these.
It's not there yet. I've made
yet?
the book, but I'm waiting for, if you go on, there is a website where you can see the copyright of all the publications done in the United States. And so on there is a copyright that's expiring this year, I think. And I'm waiting for that to expire. And then I will release the new book, which has a lot of material from the book that was copyrighted. Actually, it was copyrighted but never printed in a book. It was just printed and Xeroxed, you know, and so put in a binder and things like that. So it was a very low quality, and I have a copy of the original, and I just word processed it so that would be available, and the equations and everything and the pictures and diagrams all need to be enhanced from the Xerox copies because they had faded over time and weren't too useful. But that's something we can do, and all the people that I'm using their work, like Winston Bostic, you know, and Arthur Compton, their works I'm trying to preserve. This is not preserved in this book you're showing here. That's preserving my work on the universal force, and there's 5 volumes here, but only the first volume has been released, and volume 2 I'm supposed to start on this fall. Actually, I've already started on it, but I will be working harder to get it in printable form. My first book that I have here has come out in 8 editions. So the 8th edition is scheduled to be released later this summer. And what they are is I've added more material. I've corrected things. If anybody has pointed out a problem in the book, I've tried to fix those things so that it's acceptable. And the one last thing I'm working on right now is, if you look at the picture of the book, you can see all the electromagnetic effects that affect the orbits of the planets. And I'm doing the quantization of gravity. I'm deriving the formula that's similar to Bode's law and Stanley Dermott's law that describes the quantization of all of the various planets. And I did derive the force of gravity in this book, but I hadn't shown the quantization of gravity yet. So this will be one more chapter in the book. And that, by the way, is considered an important element in trying to develop a universal force in terms of the standard model of elementary particles and various theories of quantum mechanics and stuff like that. So anyway, that's something we could do. We could take all the work of Glen Baxter, for instance, and put that together in a book, which would then be preserved for a long period of time. And I think as long as if you list the book with something like Amazon.com, as long as anyone is looking at it, they'll continue to carry it for years.
Yeah, I tried doing that once with CreateSpace. I just took all my papers and I just made a book out of it. I never actually published it or made it available, but it's relatively easy to do. I mean, it wasn't a very pretty book or anything like that. But
well, I did make mine with a nice table of contents and index in the back and chapters, and I tried to put it in a certain order that made sense. But basically, it's a collection of many papers, kind of slightly modified to fit the the format of a book, but that's what it is. I've published over 100 papers now, and many of them are listed in the book, and but the actual chapters and everything are really bits and pieces from all those papers.
All right, Cornelius, did you want to say something?
No, I'm just basically saying that part of what Glenn has is he has an awful lot of MP3s and verbal and audios. I was also noticing that like Roger Anderson was in the conference here too, and I know he's worked on translating the works of Boscovich, and I was wondering if he had a plan or if his method of preserving that work might be of interest.
Yeah, Roger.